You've achieved a lot in your life.
Yes, I have to agree actually. It's really difficult to summarise in just a few paragraphs all the things that I've done. It might be because of my age as well, but it's true. I've had a pretty diverse background actually. So you're right, I grew up on a dairy farm.
You're one of 11 children.
Indeed, I'm number 4.
And,
so
and you've carried on the family tradition.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got 5 of my own children, 1 girl and then 4 boys, always wanted another girl, and then had the chance to sort of take on an adopted South Korean girl who we got to know during COVID when she didn't have any family in New Zealand, and we've stayed in touch with her and her husband, and yeah, so now they've got a little girl of their own, so I've kind of got, yeah, a granddaughter there, which is really lovely. Yeah, and so I grew up on a farm where we didn't have luxuries, so I understand about making do and budgeting and things like that. And also, with those 11 children, lots of arguments, especially around chores and favouritism, things like that. So you could say that I grew up in a high conflict environment with low accountability, and that kind of translates well into, yeah, some other future roles that I've had.
So you're, and the hotbed of council politics, you understand the process of finding your way through all that, and you've got good negotiation skills. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it was an essential, actually. Yeah, and we biked to school every day, to Tudori School, and it was 2 kilometres, no matter what the weather was. It was a 1 classroom school, 35 pupils, so part of that was an ethic of looking after each other and taking responsibility. I remember really enjoying toasting my cheese sandwiches on the wood burner in the wintertime in the classroom. Yeah, and yeah, we just sort of, it was kind of like a big family in the district that I grew up in, and I think I carry that forward really. So
you went to Massey University to study business, so you have a degree in business management?
Yes, so I've got a Bachelor of Business Studies majoring in management, and then I did an honours part of that where I did business and sustainability and advanced environmental management and business research methods and things like that.
Did you always want a big family?
Well, actually, when you are one of a big family and you're the older one, you end up looking after all of the younger ones. So no, I wasn't particularly interested in having a large family, but my husband Tony, he was only one of 2 children, and so he wanted to have a bigger family. So yeah, we made a compromise, I think. Yeah.
But you've obviously enjoyed it.
Yeah, and love my children, and always absolutely amazed at the kind of people they're growing into and things like that. Obviously, lots of challenges too. I think in a big family, you learn that things don't work out quite as you want, and you have to be adaptable and I suppose resourceful and things like that. Yeah, but it's great, and I find that I'm learning stuff from my kids all the time. I get a lot of assistance from them with IT stuff, which is really great, and I think just enjoying being together with them and yeah, doing family things. It's cool.
And that asks me, I want to ask you the question is, and it's a rude question, but I know how old the other candidates are, but I couldn't find any information about your age.
I know, that might be deliberate. No, and being a Toastmaster, I do know a great quote that the best way to ask a woman her age is always a mistake. Yeah.
So I take it you're not going to say a word.
No, it's all right. No, you're right. Yeah, and I'm 60. I'm 64. Yeah.
Which is probably a good age.
Well, I feel it's a good age in that, like, I'm looking forward to what the mayoralty might mean. So I feel my family's grown up. Yeah, my husband's sort of in semi-retirement phase, you know, I mean, he is still working, but he's not in a high-pressure job and things like that. So I feel that the stage that my family's at now, I feel, you know, I've got the capacity, yeah, to take on more responsibility. And
of course, at the age of 64, you've made a lot of the mistakes that you're going to make. You've learned from those mistakes, and for me, it's a very precious time of life because you've got an opportunity to enjoy the world built on the wisdom that you've developed through your youth.
Well, I hope so. I hope I have got more wisdom than I had in my earlier years. But you're right, actually, in that I feel like I've got to a point in my life where I could retire, but actually I feel I've got so much more to give, you know, and I can see opportunities, I can see things that I want to make happen. Yeah, so that's part of the motivation for me as well.
So you've been a councillor for 4 terms. That's a long stretch of time representing this part of the Waipā. Why did you decide to become a councillor in the first place, or to stand for office in the first place?
Yeah, so it wasn't part of my game plan, but I got pretty involved in the community when Tony and I moved here, because I met him in Wellington, and we came back to Pirongia in 1996, and got deeply involved in lots of community things. And the councillor at the time, she wanted to retire, and she wanted a woman to replace her. And so she actually tapped me on the shoulder and asked, would I consider standing as a councillor? And before then I hadn't really thought about it. She did mislead me in that it was an easy job and hardly any reading and short meetings and things like that, and I was a bit gullible, but yeah.
So it's not like that?
Not entirely. Yeah. So, I mean, it is a pretty serious commitment, but it's something that I was able to fit in with my family stuff as well. So, you know, it's about 22 hours a week, the councillor role. Yeah.
So, in a general sense, we're hearing this from all around the country, there's disquiet among voters who believe that councils have become very bureaucratic, and that councillors and the mayor themselves have very little influence on operational things, and it's very hard to get things done. But you've actually gotten a lot of things done in your own ward. Was it easy?
No, it isn't easy. Like for Waipā, there are about 13 people around the table, and I'm just one. Yeah, and even with another Pirongia Kakapuku ward councillor, there's still only 2 of us. So it is really hard, and you've got to be in there for the long term, actually, I think, to get stuff across. I must say that some things that I was pleased I got was like for Pirongia, they were looking for input on the central government's rollout of ultra-fast broadband and communities that it could go into. So I said, put Pirongia on the list. Yeah, and so we got ultra-fast broadband here. A lot earlier than other places. In fact, my son in Sydney says, your internet's far better than mine, Mum. Yeah, he wants. Be nice if he'd come back for that, but yeah.
Well, maybe you could do something about Fancourt districts in the north, in that part of the Waipā. Because I'm not going to say who it is, but somebody in particular, perhaps the guy just sitting right here, is still on wireless,
really?
wireless rural broadband.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Yeah, and then something else I was managed to do was we needed new public toilets here, and at the time central government was doing sort of a tourism infrastructure fund, and so we got co-funding for that. Otherwise it would have been a lot more expensive for the ratepayers to foot that bill. And one of the reasons why we needed high quality public toilets in Pirongia was all of the tourist buses that were stopping on the way to Waitomo Caves and things like that. Yeah, but I must say that I have achieved stuff around at council, but not enough. I feel I would like to have achieved a lot more. I've made a lot of suggestions over the years of things that we could be doing, and particularly in the policy and the reporting space, and it hasn't happened. And so that I guess that's another reason why I'm keen to stay on the council and be active in trying to get some other things across the line.
So what do you mean by policy and reporting space?
Yeah, so Waipā is a growth council, and that means we have a huge amount of growth debt. Like at the moment, I think it's $410 million. And we don't report that. That is not the responsibility of ratepayers to pay back. Now, I've been getting a lot of information from ratepayers say, why have we got all of this debt that we're going to have to pay back? No, it's not for ratepayers. So it's the developers that are responsible for that. So it says to me the reporting is not fit for purpose. So we should be reclassifying that portion of our debt which is only going to be repaid by developers growth debt, and the stuff that's community debt that will have to be covered by ratepayers. That in itself, I think, would alleviate quite a bit of angst that some of our ratepayers are feeling. And tied to that is that with our lending policies, we have to keep our total debt within a debt to revenue ratio. So we can't get more debt than 5 times our revenue. At the moment, the revenue formula excludes those contributions made by developers. It's crazy. It's a mismatch, a complete mismatch. So I've been asking for over 4 years to have that reporting changed, and also to seek a policy change with either local government New Zealand or central government to recognise that council growth debt should be treated differently. Like using my research skills, which I learned, I worked for the ANZ Bank as a research officer for many years. So I found out that overseas infrastructure entities, they work on a debt to asset ratio. Well, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, so things like that.
You're obviously not satisfied with the governance structure, but let's get back to that issue of messaging. I think Waipā does its messaging very poorly. I think, especially through social media, now we have to recognise that these days social media is an essential way of getting your message across. Waipā does use social media, but it tends to be, the great stuff, there's roadworks here and toilets shut there, we need to know about that. But when it comes to really big issues, we tend to get a link through to the council's website and this huge amount of detail, which, okay, for you and me, that's fine, we'll read that. But for a lot of people, it's just too much. They just need little bite-sized snippets to understand. And Waipā, in my opinion, is very poor at that.
Yeah, so I guess, how could I comment on that? I understand completely what you mean about the difficulty that ordinary people these days might have in taking in lots of printed words, text. I think that it's a real challenge because with our digital media stuff and used to having a lot of pictures, I think it is hard for people to grasp the main points of something, And so I'm really keen on improving communication so people feel they can get the information they need easily and relevant as well. And so that's a challenge. I think that there has been work to try and improve that. And also another problem that we have, or a challenge, is that with the social media space, you do get aggression, you do get abuse, and so I do understand staff trying to limit that. Like, I think I've had comments about it's not fair that the comments are turned off on a lot of the Facebook stuff, and so somehow we've got to find a balance, I guess.
Well, as an avid social media person, I was quite relieved when the council shut off the comment section because it was quite depressing. Okay. And it was the same names, day in, day out, just being abusive, obtuse, and no matter what the council said or did, the council was the bad guy. And I think one of the primary ones was the cycleways. Same group harping on and on. Nobody uses them. You've wasted my money. This is a load of woke nonsense, etc., etc., etc. I had a very interesting conversation with an 82-year-old woman and her 85-year-old husband. They live right on the edge of town at the end of Hamilton Road, and they use the cycleways. They go everywhere in Cambridge, including the doctor, the supermarket. They visit their friends on electric bikes. Wow. And they said Cambridge is a retirement destination. And one of the reasons is because you can get your mobility scooter out onto the cycleway and you can go anywhere.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that counters this constant chart that nobody uses the cycleways. They're actually much beloved from my experience.
Yes, and mine too. Not that I have the total numbers in my head, but I do. I also know someone that lives close to the High Level Bridge, and he said he's done over 30,000 kilometres on Cambridge cycleways since they started. Yeah, he does it every morning. Yeah, and it's just part of his daily routine.
Well, this is something that's been on my mind, was we are living in the age at the moment of misinformation and disinformation, and we get a very lot of angry people driving discussion and debate. The people who were, when the Waipā cut off the comment sections on Facebook, they really dealt a blow to that particular voice. But there is a perception that loud, angry voice actually drives policy and drives what councillors are going to do, because one, they're a little bit afraid to stand up to it, or they're a little bit cowed by it, or they believe that is the authentic voice of the people.
I think you hit on a really critical point. You know, that when councils make a decision, they have to make sure they've canvassed all of the community, and that they've captured that genuine voice or the genuine need that we're wanting to address. Yeah, and so one of my platforms is that, you know, I'm a good listener, and I am committed to making sure that our processes are really effective about getting that message out, and it's a clear message, it's understandable, it's supported well by other information that gives it balance and things like that. You know, I use my business management training, I suppose, there, what's needed to make a good decision or whatever. And you know, we do have to give space to all voices. So we do get those loud voices, and but I think the important thing for me is to getting those softer voices, or those voices that might not have been...
What they call the silent majority?
Yeah, I felt that there was no point, or they maybe council wasn't interested in hearing from them. Yeah, so I'm all about, you know, creating an inclusive community. It's one of the reasons why I do support Māori participation. I'm also keen on getting the seniors and the youth and migrants as well, because all of those different parts of our community are really important, and I'm not sure if they're well represented at the moment in how we're, you know, collecting information from them, hearing what they want.
Well, on that note, let's briefly talk about abuse, because it has been an issue, especially with women in elected positions. I understand that the Maori ward councillor in Cambridge has or the Waipā, I should say, has had a really tough time.
Well, she's shared with us other councillors that she regularly gets emailed abuse, yeah, and even people coming to her door, actually, accusing her of things, or telling her she's not welcome and things like that, which I think is dreadful, yeah. And in fact, it is a sad reflection that people in public office now, this is part of what you're going to get, part of the package, really, if you stand. There are ways to, I suppose, manage it better. You know, there's good guidance and tools and things like that. Personally, I haven't received a high level of abuse, and I think I try really hard to give reasonable responses to people, but I do know that you get to the point where you say, look, I've provided you with the information, I've responded on the topics that you wanted. I don't think that, you know, we can actually achieve any more by continuing with this line of inquiry or with this conversation, so I won't be contributing anymore. Something of that nature.
Waipā Council for women. It's a very male-dominated council.
Well, yes and no, actually, because we've had Mayor Susan and also Deputy Mayor Liz for the last 3 years, and I have enjoyed working with them. I mean, I think people wonder whether or not I haven't had that good relationship since I'm standing for the mayoralty. No, that's not the case. I feel I've had a pretty good relationship with those other women around the table. It's just particular policies that I feel very deeply about. But not only that, we also have senior staff, a lot of female faces there. You know, we've got Steph O'Sullivan, and then in the senior leadership team, you know, we've got 3 or 4 women as well. So I'm really pleased to see that. I was at a function last night actually, and someone congratulated me for standing for the mayoralty, because there were 2 female candidates now for the mayoralty, and that had never happened in the history of Waipā. And she said that was just a fantastic model for her to be showing her daughter.
So why do you want to be mayor?
Yeah, so look, I do feel that there's a lot more to be done, and I've been really dissatisfied with the financial situation that I see council in now that with firmer control over spending and debt management, we could be in a far better situation, mainly because our community projects have been stalled because of that financial situation we're in.
You're talking about the Cambridge Library, for example.
Exactly, the Cambridge Library. Over in Awamutu, there was Te Arawai there. It's still there. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it has to proceed immediately. But Te Awamutu definitely needs some kind of shot in the arm in terms of economic development. Yeah, and that hasn't been possible.
Well, economic development, that brings me around to one of my pet subjects, which is Parewa. Just to give you some context, I didn't know anything about Parewa. February last year, I read my first story on it on social media, and I was deeply concerned about the comments I was reading. Basically just misinformation and disinformation. And I spent a month researching everything I could about waste to energy technology, and then I wrote about it. And by the time I got to that stage, I'd become convinced and was an advocate, and I could see the wonderful potential for Parewa here in Te Awamutu. Overseas, waste to energy plants are not standalone enterprises. They engender huge economic development. They provide not only jobs in the plant, but the industries that build up around them, which includes horticulture, is a very big part of waste to energy, because they produce hot water for heating glass houses, and they produce CO2, which also feeds into glass houses. So I saw this incredible opportunity, and when I read the council's submission to the Environment Court, I was deeply disappointed, because it intimated that this technology was dangerous and it was somehow going to ruin the reputation of our dairy industry. And then the bit that really upset me the most was when the council said, we're going to focus on zero waste and waste minimisation. My calculations are that Waipā might send 12% of its total waste load to recycling. That statement completely ignored the fact that most of our waste in New Zealand is in the non-recyclable category. And you can have waste and minimisation up the wazoo. It's not going to change a thing. So we had this wonderful opportunity. We might still have yet. The Environment Court hasn't made its decision, but I was very disappointed. And I thought that the council had cowed to a very loud but conspiracy-prone voice.
Yeah, so those are interesting comments. I wouldn't say that council had cowed to what might be conspiracy voices. Like, we received over 900 submissions against it.
Okay, now I'll stop you there, because this is a very, very important point. Don't Burn Waipā made no secret of the fact that they had a production line of those submissions. We fill it out, you sign your name. So I don't believe that's a legitimate argument
fair enough.
against the plant.
Yeah. So I guess that's just based on the numbers. So it's interesting that you raised this. So I actually have done research on waste to energy plants myself before this proposal came up, because I am really interested in climate change, environmental sustainability and things like that. And like you, the message I got was that it's very clean and it has a lot of positives. And so I was surprised at the level of opposition that the proposal receives. But when you look at the detailed, I suppose, workings of how it would operate and the feedstock and things like that, I could see why people were concerned. Now, as part of resource management processes, councillors are very much required to remain completely impartial and not get involved in either the pros or the cons. And so that's been my stance, and I've been just relying on, the process that's been going on, with that Board of Inquiry. I am nervous myself about if it is consented, what impacts it might have on those living, in the vicinity of it. Because while I can't say I've been absolutely across every detail of the application, the impression I got of the the technical specifications, particularly of the emissions, was that it wasn't one of the cleanest processes. So I was concerned about that. And also, one of the things that's come out of Europe is even though those waste to energy plants have been, I suppose, meeting the environmental standards for emissions, for the EU, which is supposed to be one of the best in the world, people that live in that live in Paris and the environs of that now can't keep chickens because of the contamination.
Yes, I investigated all these claims, and I couldn't verify any of them.
Yeah, so that was part of a submission.
We are talking mostly with that kind of issue. We're talking about historical waste incinerators. So before, at the moment, we're using waste to energy as a technology. It's not an incinerator, which a lot of people think it is. So it cleans all the toxins out. Waste to energy has been a system, incineration of waste has been going on for well over 100 years. And until the 1980s, it was a pretty dirty business. And we do have, Switzerland is a case in point. They're going through a big pollution mitigation process at the moment, cleaning up historical waste. But modern plants don't operate like that. So yes, I investigated all these claims. I could find no verification for them, but I could find historical evidence from past technologies. And that has been a problem, has polluted the soil and the water.
Yeah, so people can't keep hens and things like that because they'll eat worms from the soil.
But then, of course, we can't do that in a lot of sections in New Zealand because of lead paint issues.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was a bit of a red herring, that one.
Yeah, well, just responding to your statement that it's probably because of old technology and it's an historical contamination issue. I mean, I did see the article where it was announced in Paris, and I think it was only recently. So you would have thought if it was historical, they would have made that ruling a lot earlier than now. That's all. Yeah. But anyway, in the end, we're relying on the decision of the Board of Inquiry, really, and whatever's decided there. I don't think there might be an appeal possible, I don't know, but they're very limited appeal provisions, so and I think the decision's expected within the month, actually. Yeah.
This brings us to a very important point. Waipā's population is going to grow exponentially over the next 20, 30 years. Yeah. What are we going to do to provide jobs for these people? We're going to need industry.
Indeed.
And what kind of industry are we going to have? The council's been we want to create family and friendly environments. What does that mean? Yes,
well, that's a really good question, and I must say that council does have really good planning processes, I think. And as a commissioner for resource management hearings, actually myself, I've been involved in the rezoning of industrial land, particularly over at Hautapu. And so we're always checking on demand for industrial land to make sure that we've got sufficient land so that any new industry is able to set up here without any constraints. And so I'm pretty confident that we'd be able to do that. Now, council doesn't control, what entities are deciding they're going to come and set up.
But you can encourage.
Yeah, and what seems to be a big thing for them is communities where they'd like their workers to live. Yeah, and so things like livable urban areas, great schools, great swimming pools, things like that, well-functioning arterial routes and connections like to the expressway and things like that. Those are all really important. Yeah, and so while we can't sort of dictate who or what might actually set up, but we can, I suppose, create the conditions. Yeah, and so I think that we're doing a reasonably good job of that. I wish I could get more happening over the Te Awamutu side. And I think around the airport too, there's a lot of interest there. And that's also had recently rezoned land, to open up for light industrial.
Well, that brings up 2 points for me, because I live right next to Hautapu, more or less. I'm enjoying seeing the development, and I'm enjoying seeing the prosperity it's bringing to the area. I am worried, being a former farmer, about losing all that beautiful bruntwood loam, which ranks, if it's not the best soil in the country, it's very close to it, and there's only a very thin band of it, and we're building on top of it. That right underneath that development is one of the best aquifers in that district, in that area. A beautiful sand aquifer filled with beautiful clear water. And anybody who farms over that way, perhaps over this way as well, knows how problematic finding good water can be. So you're very concerned about the environment. You're very big on sustainability. Are we getting that right? Are we getting it right by building more and more subdivisions over really good land? And on that subject of subdivisions, in preparation for these interviews, I've done a big look at overseas, Australia, the US, the UK, Singapore, Japan, how local councils there go about keeping costs down and how they get involved. And one of the things they do is they develop land themselves. And the way that we develop, by ploughing all the topsoil off and then laying down tar seal roads and putting in, it's a very expensive way of doing things, and there are a lot cheaper ways of doing. As for building over the land.
Yes, well, that's a really, I suppose, it's a really relevant point right now, because we do have national policy statements both on urban development and also highly productive land, and there is a conflict. And on those resource consent panels that I was on, that was a real focus to make sure that we understood the provisions of each of them and how they interrelated to the proposal, that we were considering. Now, I must say the current government is actually winding back some of those restrictions on highly productive land. Also, around Cambridge in particular, there are no options to expand other than onto highly productive land. And so one of the arguments that was put forward by one of the economic experts that we had submitting was that that you can't stop an urban area growing because that you're going to say that preserving that highly productive land must happen at all costs. So at all costs, that would mean no further growth at all beyond the existing boundary for Cambridge.
Well, let's take Mangakawa, which is on the northern edge of Cambridge, going up towards the Te Plateau. That's poor land. And a lot of the land in the low areas around Mangakawa, that's poor land. It's not great farmland. It's too wet, it's too puggy. If you've ever been to Wellington, which you have, you've lived in Wellington, you'll know the precarious places they put houses. We could be building on that kind of land, but we prefer to be building on flat land because it's simple and easy.
And also, it's joined to the CBD. So that's a big consideration, that all the services that have already been put in the ground in the Cambridge area, they're networks, and so it makes sense to simply extend the network that's there than to look at another centre and so like Mangakawa and start almost from scratch there. And so there's a lot of that, clustering, and because you've already got, I suppose, sunk costs in the ground somewhere, it makes sense to intensify in that area and then just expand incrementally. Now, there's a lot of energy going into intensification, and I support higher density housing, where it stops the sprawl, but it does have to be done sensitively, because you've still got to have people living in pleasant areas, access to green space, ways to get around that don't just create more pollution and things like that. And so that's something I've disagreed with the national direction, is that there was no safeguarding of amenity or the livability of the urban area where we're told it has to increase in density.
Now, all three of the mayoral candidates, to quote you, forward thinking. To quote Mike and Susan, innovative. Yet I see the development of Cambridge and Te Awamutu is not innovative. It's just bog standard, the way it happens, the way it rolls out, the way we build subdivisions and the way that we develop. There's no real innovation going on there.
Well, I've made suggestions about how to be innovative, particularly around reducing emissions. And that's because there's, again, using my research skills, there's a movement over in the US called Strong Towns, and they identified that by doing the standard approach to development, and it contributes to that urban sprawl, and you have designated areas for industry and designated areas for business and then residential activity and things like that. And that creates a need to commute from one to the other, schools to work to home and all that kind of thing. What the Strong Town philosophy is that you enable mixed use within your growth cells, so that within a new area you're going to have part that is industrial, but part that is residential, and part that is commercial, or like services with schools and things like that. So I'm an advocate for that, and in fact, so one of the things that I requested was that there be percentages imposed for a new growth cell that has to provide for a particular percentage of residential units and commercial and things like that. Now, we do already have a lot of good practices around expecting developers to use low impact design, water sensitive, I suppose, methods, like collecting stormwater and things like that, and then managing stormwater really well. I think that you get the policy layers which council's doing, with those things I've just mentioned, but the individual developers, they have the freedom to develop how they wish, and then your suggestion that council should be doing the development themselves, and then they'd actually benefit from that value uplift and that. That's a philosophical argument as well as an economic one. I've heard it around the council table previously, not recently, but probably when I was first elected, that it's not council's place to be a developer. It's taking a risk with ratepayers' money, and we shouldn't be taking that risk. It should be left to the private sector. I guess that's where it's landed at the moment at Waipā. Like at the moment we've had a pretty strong development sector that pretty much everything that's been planned has been built successfully and sold successfully and things like that. But it doesn't always work that way, and you can get cycles where the developer actually has to take quite a big loss. And so when that came up for discussion, it was felt it wasn't the right thing to do with ratepayer money.
Okay, yes, that's interesting. One of the innovations I've been seeing in Europe and the US is these new developments that there's no cars. So within an internal block, no cars allowed. They do it in two ways. They link that with public transport, and they get people to park their cars elsewhere, so that you can have a much more sustainable development and a more family friendly. And the interesting thing about these projects are that when they went ahead, people were saying, well, it's just not going to work. They've actually worked spectacularly well wherever they've gone in. And people have said, well, I thought it was going to be difficult not having my car right next to me, and I was wondering how I was going to cope. Well, actually, I coped fine.
Yeah, so that might be, some kind of variation on that Strong Towns approach.
It is, yes.
Yeah, where you get that mixed use within an area, so you don't have to travel a long way to do the things you want to do on a pretty regular basis.
And of course, one of the benefits of it too is you get families and older people and younger single people all living in very close proximity to each other on streets without cars where you can just go out and hang. And apparently the mental health aspect really goes off the charts.
Yeah, and
people are happier.
And it's really good from a rating point of view too. It's a lot less, the rates burdens are a lot less as well. Those kind of mixed communities or mixed growth cells, because it's not just a community residentially, because you've got the business and the industry too. Yeah, but it actually is a good formula for making sure that the rates that are collected are covered by that community, and you're not having to cross-subsidise with others. Yeah, so it's supposed to be really cost-effective as well. I haven't done the numbers though, but the stuff that I read about the strong towns, they did do Auckland, part of Auckland as an example. Yeah, but I don't know how it would work in Waipā.
I was interviewing Simon Bridges recently. Do you remember that name?
I do.
And he was talking about development of the Waipā. And I was kind of surprised by what he said, but after I went home and thought about it, I thought, well, he's onto something. So traditionally, when we talk about development and providing jobs for people, we're talking about manufacturing and factories and warehousing and what have you. Simon was talking about data centres. Waipā has a huge water resource. We also have incredible electricity potential. The Waikato region as a whole generates about 30% of the country's electricity on any one day. Waipā, we've got our hydro dams, but we've really not even started to look at renewables. And we have a great climate.
We do.
We have an incredible opportunity for agrovoltaics, for example, especially for this farmer going out in the heat of the summer and seeing cows without any shade. And you think, gosh, agrovoltaics would be perfect for that. They can graze underneath them, which is happening all over the world. So he triggered something in me, and he was quite right.
I agree.
A high-tech base. Once you get data centres coming in, you have all kinds of support industries that have to go in their place, and you've got the one area where there's huge job growth is in technology.
Well, I feel I am a forward-thinking person, so we've just done Ahuaki, our community spatial plan, and it covers infrastructure needs for the next 30 years. I was the one that asked for renewable energy to be included.
And was it included?
No. Another example of things that I've asked for and it doesn't get done. I also asked...
Why was it excluded?
Well, they said they'd do it next time. That's all. It's going to be renewed every 5 years. But I'm just giving an example where I'm familiar with this kind of thinking. Yeah, scanning, what are the trends, what are the opportunities? So I did ask that renewable energy be included in our community spatial plan, but it wasn't this time around. And there've been other examples where I've asked for stuff to be looked at, adopted, early adopted. Another one was for affordable housing, inclusionary zoning. That hasn't gone anywhere either, although I must say there was support at a staff level and even around the council table, but some of these things also need central government support. Like if you look at the way change happens, when you're in what you'd call, a nested environment, Waipā's down in the middle of the nest. There are more influential layers around us, and the most influential layer is central government in New Zealand. Okay, and if they're not going to play ball with what we're trying to achieve, it's pretty difficult for us. Yeah, so I've been wanting to have inclusionary zoning as one of our standards, so that means a small proportion of land in new subdivisions is made available for either community housing or low cost private housing, and that just means that we're maintaining, I suppose, what I'd say a good balance of demographics. Yeah, across our communities, especially the new subdivisions. Yeah.
That brings up an interesting point, affordable housing. I've been reading about these new facilities for retired older people who have got no money. Not everybody can afford to live in the Tamahere Country Club or in a Bupa village. So these facilities are very low cost. They have communal kitchens. They have limited bathroom facilities in the rooms. It's mainly all communal. It means that the cost is low, but you have high quality, warm, safe living spaces. And it also means that older people are able to socialise. They're not cut off. They're not living in a unit in a subdivision. I'm very excited by those ideas because our ageing population, the amount of, we seem to forget that not a good 50% of our population are going to retire with very, very little. And it's not because they've been wasteful or extravagant, it's because they've worked at low paid jobs for most of their lives. It gives you very little opportunity to say, but the work they do is essential for us.
Oh, absolutely, and they deserve, a valued place in our community even as they get older. Yeah, and so that's about that inclusive, I suppose, value that I bring. And so I hear what you're saying, and I think there is an example in Waipā where we've already achieved something along those lines. We entered into a collaboration with Habitat for Humanity in Awamutu with Freeman Court. So they've taken over the management of that, and they have expansion plans so that they can provide low-cost accommodation opportunities, for seniors. However, I'm also really interested on that from a collaborative point of view. Now, I'm a very collaborative person. All of the environmental projects that I led really successfully were around collaborations at quite a large scale. And so I see this as an opportunity to find partners that have got similar values for, looking after those older members of our community and seeing how we could, get something happening that is going to meet their needs, not be a burden on all of the ratepayers. Well, I could talk about that a bit more. So not necessarily council funding the whole lot, but certainly having a solution in place where they've already got their connections with their family and friends and things like that. So I say that about the rates burden, or whether or not ratepayers would meet that cost. So I am aware of Palmerston North City where they consulted on whether or not the council should provide low-cost accommodation for seniors, and they got a clear message from their community that they supported it. And so you do have in Palmerston North some sort of units sort of all together there, and they are really low cost, and I think it's a success story. So I learned about that by going to a local government conference in Palmerston North, and again, one of the sort of things I research when I can, because I see the future and how unaffordable it could be, and so I am always looking on the outlook for things that, so small scale solutions that have worked somewhere else. You understand that, okay, so it works in that context. How can we then make it work in our context if we've got other people around the table who might be able to contribute different things and different viewpoints? So that's a pretty well recognised business analysis technique.
Now I'm going to ask you, in the statement you gave to me in our email preliminary emails before this interview, you said, I live by strong Christian values. Now I'm going to ask you about that, and here's the context. I feel that Christianity in 2025 is not about the caring, compassionate, non-judgmental Jesus. It's about reactionary politics. It's about imposing conservative values on the general population. It's about bigotry. It's about prejudice. And it's about hate. And there's an awful lot of abuse going on as well within Christian institutions. What kind of Christian are you?
So I come from a Catholic background, so I'm very familiar with the abuse that the hierarchy has perpetrated on innocent victims, which has been a huge disappointment, and I'm really ashamed of that. And I hope that our bishops and other clergy are taking the lessons and trying to set things right. I don't see that as having a part in council business. When I talk about Christian values, I do talk about being committed to non-violence and peaceful methods, inclusive, and trying to be respectful and being forgiving, and those kinds of things. And also the values that Jesus or the Bible do sort of set out pretty clearly. So those are the things that that I'm drawing on. I'm also really committed to unity, or Christian unity, so not necessarily denominational stuff. So I'm very concerned about all people feeling like they belong. Yeah, I think that's really important. And that another side of Christianity is that we're all children of the one God. So in fact, all of us, really we should be treating each other as brothers and sisters, as part of a bigger family. So, and that sort of underlying love and respect and looking after each other. So that's how I would say it. I think too, around the council table, there's a commitment to honesty and integrity. If you say you're going to do something, you do it, you are accountable. Yeah, so that kind of is all, tied up in there.
Okay, well, let's finish on two questions. One, go back to where we started. I don't think we properly addressed that, but as you said in your statement, you said the Mayor is very big, sees the council as governance and to stay out of operational matters. Now, that's a very important issue for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it really, and in fact, it really goes to the heart of why I'm around the council table, because I feel I am accountable to my community. So, there's quite a strong, I suppose, philosophy that there's a separation between governance and management, and that anything that's hands-on should be hands-off for governance. Yeah, and so I think there's been a tendency in this triennium for anything to do with operations to be seen as management, and that councillors should keep their noses out. We can ask staff to do stuff and report to us about, things, or, like ask them to find savings and things, and they can report back what they have found, but that's about it. So, yeah, I'm not in that camp at all, because that kind of approach, it's kind of a corporate approach in a way, because it sort of assumes that the business side of things will be operating efficiently. There'll be market forces, there'll be a drive for returns to shareholders and things like that. And of course, in a free market, if you're not delivering the goods at the price point that people want, there's an alternative. They can go somewhere else. So there's quite a lot of really strong forces that are driving efficiencies in what I call a normal corporate setting. But councils aren't in that setting, okay? They're monopolies. People don't have a choice. They can't go anywhere else for other services. And they raise their money through taxing people. That's what rates are. It's a tax. You can't avoid it. You can't appeal it. They've got the power to rate you, and you have to pay it. And if you don't, there's a penalty. Councillors are elected. Well, one of our roles, I think, is to make sure that the rates that are set are justifiable and equitable, that they're well founded, and the processes to make sure that they're set at a reasonable level. And part of that is that you can see the operational side of it. Yeah. Well,
maybe we should finish on rates, because every single candidate that's standing for election, there'll be accountability. I'll bring accountability. I'll make everybody. I'm going to change everything, and I'm going to bring those rates down. I'm going to cut costs, and I'm going to slash budgets, and I'm going to get rid of all the deadwood. It never happens.
Yeah, so
it's rhetoric.
Yeah, I guess so. And yeah, you've got to look at the candidate and say, well, do they have the skills to do it or not? Yeah.
But we also have to be realistic. Cambridge in particular is one of the country's growth spots. And when a town is growing, it gets expensive, because there's a lot to do. You're always building ahead for the future.
So we've got a policy called growth pays for growth. So you'd think that the way the system is set up, if there are extra costs because a town is growing, that it's actually met by the people that are causing the growth or benefiting from that growth. Yeah. And so one of the things I want to do is to have a look at those formulas to make sure growth is paying for growth, and if it isn't, why not? Yeah, so I do think that it isn't paying for growth. There's a lot of indicators in our finances that point to that, but I don't know why. And I want to ensure that we can understand the why, So then we can work out how. Yeah, so we have a formula where growth is meant to be paying for growth, but I don't think that's happening, but I don't know why. So I'm going to bring my analytical skills and my financial brain to to do the analysis, to understand what's happening there, because if you just look at the financial projections that we've got, it doesn't seem to be, And so if we understand what's happening, we can then address it in the right way. At the moment, we don't. We don't have that information. I did ask for more information on that, was denied it, so that's one of the reasons why I am standing for the mayoralty. The other thing I'm campaigning on is affordable rates, and you're right, it is hard to find voluntary savings. I think that's what we've seen this time around. But I'm looking at someone like Mayor Wayne Brown in Auckland. So what his approach was is that he asked of the Chief Executive, what would it take to get our rates requirement down to a 2.5% increase? So the staff go away and they answer that particular question, come back, we're going to cut this, and that is where the elected members can then look at that list and say, yeah, we're happy with that. Oh no, that's going too far. I think our community would say we should retain that. It's going to take us above that 2.5%, but it's justified. So that kind of process. So you set your target where you want to have your rates requirement at based on an inflation rate increase, and then you get the reporting that says this is how it would be done. It's worked in Auckland. I don't know why it wouldn't work in Waipā.
Mike Pettit, one of the other mayoral candidates, has talked about user pays and community trusts, private council partnerships to develop certain sites. That one has merit. User pays. He didn't define where they should be applied, but for me the alarm bells start ringing, because when user pays is applied, the people who suffer are low income people.
Well, in fact, we have user pays for our water services, okay, which is quite a big chunk of our revenue stream. Yeah, and so, and also when you look at the budgets of our activities, a lot of them can't be user pays. You know, like they're just looking after our parks and reserves. We're not going to charge an admission fee for that.
Well, I would. Yeah. When I hear user pays, I automatically think services like libraries, which is not. Yeah. To be fair to Mike, it wasn't on his agenda, but those kind of user pays, they worry me.
Yeah, that's right. I think you've got to look at there are benefits in providing these services so that low income people can still access them. Now, something else that I've been asking for ever since I was elected 12 years ago is alternative revenue streams. Okay, so things that council can do because of their role in the community, where they can raise funds in other ways. So the one that is the easiest in terms of what I can think of is a visitor levy, which is not a bed tax, but rather those people that are providing visitor accommodation, that a daily charge or just a booking charge of $10 or $15 per booking, is collected and passed through to the council.
Well, now, can we just address that for a second? We're seeing all over the world locals getting sick and tired of the sheer volume of tourists, and New Zealand's not immune from that as well. And we're finding all over the world that these sorts of charges actually reduce the tourist volume, which I don't think is a bad thing. I would prefer to see New Zealand as a premier tourist destination than just a supermarket destination. That really doesn't work for Waipā because we're right off the tourist map, really. Everybody passes through us. But the potential is here for a big tourist industry. We do have some beautiful, wonderful things,
Oh, we do. And so, I think you raise a good point about you don't want the levy to be too high to discourage, I suppose, patronage or people visiting. And I think that can be worked on, and you can use sort of analysis in other places. What was the amount? Was it $10 or $20 or whatever, you know, and what impact it had. So you have good certainty as to what would be the right level. Of course, it's not easy to impose these because it has to be kind of a bylaw or, you know, that's sort of passed by council, and then you'll get people opposing it, especially those that have accommodation, which is fair enough. And so what I'd really like is for central government to say that councils are entitled to impose these kind of charges for visitors, especially if it's going to be used to maintain existing visitor infrastructure like public toilets, cycleways, parks, reserves, whatever, that those visitors are actually benefiting from while they're in Waipā. Yeah. Now that hasn't happened, so I'm pretty disappointed with central government on a lot of issues, and that's another reason why I'd like to be the mayor, because then I get the opportunity to be lobbying more closely with, I suppose, both politicians and, you know, senior public servants as well, to try and get the message across that we need these kind of changes at a national policy level to make councils have a fit-for-purpose toolbox for funding and financing, our operations.
Clare St. Pierre, thank you very much for your time.